All right, welcome to Modern Tactical Shooting. Now, the subject of this video is from viewer request, and that is how to get better or how to shoot better in matches. And the tips and methods I'm going to go over in this video, they apply to all your different action shooting sports like 2-gun, 3-gun, and USPSA style pistol matches. So let's get into match tips and methods right now. So first up, let's talk about how I approach shooting a course of fire or a stage. I like to shoot what's known as, or what I call, shooting point to point, meaning I like to find the fewest positions within a course of fire where I can see all the targets from. So for instance, let's say I look at a course of fire and I can shoot it from 3 different positions where the average shooter is going to need 4 different positions to see all the targets. Then I'll already have a faster time because I'll save time by not going to that 4th position. So I call that point to point. I'm going to demonstrate it in these 2 video clips right here. The stage is set up to shoot and move, but if you don't move fast enough while you're shooting, you can actually hurt your time. And I'll talk about shooting and moving here in a second. But I'm going to shoot these 2 different video clips. One, I'm going to shoot it shooting and moving the entire time. And then the other clip, I'm going to break it down to just 2 shooting positions, and we can compare those 2 times. Woo! And that was a 9 even. I know I got 1C, but that's a 771. I'm going to do a little shooting and moving in the beginning of the stage. It's set up to shoot and move the entire thing, but watch my footwork. I'm going to do little micro bursts to certain points within the stage, and that's key, being able to change your speed, finish out these targets, quick transition, and watch a little micro burst down to this corner where I can see all the targets. And then I'm going to do another little micro burst over to this corner where I can again see the rest of the targets. All right, I'm going to shoot this corner, a little moving backwards while shooting, come up to this point. Now this stage is kind of set up to shoot point to begin with, but I'm not going to waste time moving and shooting into these corners. I'm going to get right to the corners where I can see all the targets. Quick speed reload and finish out this corner right here. So again, I call it point to point. Todd Jarrett, world champ, he calls it being sneaky fast. Again, it plays to my strengths. Now let's talk about shooting and moving. I do it a lot, but again, I prefer point to point. The key with shooting and moving is most of us can only be pretty accurately, really at 10 yards and under. And you got to be able to shoot and move at least normal walking pace. The fault with a lot of competitors is they'll shoot and move, but they're kind of doing baby steps or really have to slow their pace down to be able to hit targets. So while you think you're doing a lot because you're doing 2 things at once, moving while shooting, well, if your pace is super slow, then you're kind of wasting time in that stage. So I do shoot and move in a match, but I like to, again, lean towards getting to one spot where I can see the most targets. And if I am going to shoot and move, generally it's at 10 yards and under, so I can try and keep up that rate of fire, as you'll see in this clip right here. Now, my favorite move in a stage or tip here is to shoot inside to out when shooting around a barrier or cover, if you want to call it, or a vision blind or some sort of obstacle. I always look deep around that obstacle. I shoot inside and then out. And the reason why I do this is because of time. Now, your average shooter, they're going to run up and they're going to shoot targets as they see them, as they approach that obstacle, because those targets on the outside are right there. The problem with that, it keeps you in that one spot until you shoot all those targets around that deep angle. But if you shoot the targets around the deep angle first, Well, as you work towards those outer targets, you can start moving towards your next targets within that stage. You start building that forward momentum into the stage. So you're going to see in these video clips right here, I'm going to start at that hard angle on the inside, and then I'm going to start walking backwards, shooting while moving, getting deeper into the stage. And it can help save a few seconds. And in a match, the top 10 slots, whether it's a local match or a major championship, or the top 10 slots are usually only separated by a second or two. There's not a big division. So even if this just saves you a tenth of a second, keeping up that forward momentum can help you, and that's shooting the inside angle first. All right, start on the inside target, shooting, moving backwards, hitting the easy angles. Now here I do shoot outside to in because I'm stuck in this corner anyways, because this is where I have to transition. All right, this one's gonna happen fast at the inside target, and then shooting and moving backwards, just trying to get to that next target on the other side of the stage. Now, you got to know the rules to break the rules. That's what Professor Bowman, one of my instructors when I was getting my media degree at Campbell University, said. You got to know the rules to break the rules. I don't always shoot inside and out, but if I'm presented with that at a beginning of a stage, that can really help save a little bit of time. Now let's talk about reloading in a course of fire, and I know tactical shooters are going to tear me apart on this, but this is not tactical shooting, this is competitive shooting. And one thing you want to avoid in competitive shooting is called a flat-footed reload, meaning you're stuck in one spot, presented with targets you have not shot yet, you've shot your gun empty, you've got to do a reload, and even if you're doing a 1 second or 2 second reload, that's still 1 or 2 seconds you're standing in one spot and not moving at all in that course of fire because you have to finish that engagement. You don't want that at all. So to avoid that, you do what's known as a speed reload. Regardless if your magazine is empty or not, you're always going to keep your pistol topped off. So yes, you're jettisoning sometimes half full mags in the middle of the stage. Now, where do you do this? I look for movement within the stage where there's no targets that are going to be presented. Generally, if there's 2 or 3 seconds of movement, about 7 to 10 yards, sometimes less, movement where there's no targets presented, I'll use that time to always again try and do multiple things at once, and I'll do a speed reload. I'll dump that mag, it doesn't matter how many rounds are left in it, to always keep one in the chamber, and that is key. You don't want your pistol or your rifle to go to slide lock or bolt lock because it's a longer reload. And again, you don't want to be in the middle of an engagement and having your gun go empty and then you've got to stop shooting to reload. Again, you're just burning time on the clock. So I always incorporate reloads within movement, and that way you're doing multiple things at once and saving time. All right, start out shooting these. Again, a little shooting and moving backwards, getting to my next point. There's going to be about 10 yards to the next target array, and that's where you're going to see I'm going to work in that speed reload. 2 things at once, and here it is. Reload's already long done. Now also when it comes to reloading, you don't have time to count your individual shots in a course of fire. You're not going to have time. If you are counting your shots, you're probably shooting too slow. You count targets. So let's say there's 11 targets within a stage. They all need 2 shots each. That's 22 rounds. If I'm running a standard Glock magazine, that means I can shoot 8 targets with that 17-round mag, keeping one in the chamber before I have to reload. So I'll count out those 8 targets and I'll start planning where I need to reload around there. So you count targets, not shots in a match. All right, one quick tip I see happen a lot in matches is on blind starts, where you can't see the target array because you're forced to start standing behind some sort of barrier. You see a lot in competition. You have to start with your hands on the barrier or hands touching an X. You just don't want to stare at the barrier and stare at nothing. You need to have your head turned in the direction at least that you need to go. My first target is over my shoulder on the left around this barrier, so I want my head facing left, telling my body and hands exactly where I'm going. You might save 1/100th of a second or just 1/10 of a second, but those hundredths and tenths add up over time. So always start with your head in the direction that you need to go if you can't actually look at your first target that you're going to engage. A quick demonstration. And then I would move on out and shoot the rest of the stage. Now in this clip right here from a two-gun match, it's gonna happen really fast, but I'm standing behind a barrier. It's a trailer. There's a mark on the trailer where the barrel of my rifle must touch. But if you notice, my head is pointing in the direction where I need to go first to engage some targets off to the left. Let's cut to the range clip. Now this next tip might seem as a low down or sneaky move, but I want to talk about shooting areas and taking shortcuts. And what do I mean by that? Now in a course of fire in a match, the course of fire itself is going to be laid out using PVC pipe, strips of wood, or even rope, and that is the shooting area, meaning all of the shots you have to take or have to be within that shooting area, or you're going to receive penalties and procedures for shooting out of the shooting area. Now, many people think, well, that's also the area in which you have to move in, and that is not true. You can actually take shortcuts through the stage, jumping out of the shooting area and then stepping back into the shooting area, again, as long as all your shots happen within the shooting area. So if the course of fire is marked out in some crazy format and you see a shortcut, a straight line through the shooting area, where, again, if you're moving point to point like me, and you're like, hey, if I move from here, jump out of the shooting area and then step back in, and I'm presented with a bunch of targets, and I'm saving time because I'm cutting the distance I have to walk through the actual course of fire itself, it's totally allowed. Again, it's kind of seen as a sneaky move, but all seasoned competitors look for this within courses of fire. And again, it's totally allowed because it's the shooting area, not the walking area. And I'm going to demonstrate it in this stage right here, which I ended up with a fantastic time on. You're going to see me try and kind of cut through the side of the stage there and step back into the shooting area.
Nice.
Now let's talk about moving targets or disappearing targets. They're called drop turners or swinging targets, targets that have any sort of movement. In my walkthrough of the stage, I always plan to give those targets 3 shots right out the gate. Now, why do I do that? Because if you engage them twice, well, the tendency is for people to slow down, use follow through, and to see if they actually got 2 hits on that mover or swinging target. Well, that takes time, and I don't want to waste a second or even a tenth or a hundredth of a second trying to look at the target to make sure I got 2 solid hits. So I just give them 3 anyways right off the bat. So if I plan to give all these movers and swingers 3 shots each in my initial walkthrough, I can again factor in how many rounds I'm going to shoot as I approach these targets, and that goes into when I need to do a speed reload so I don't run empty. So if I just factor in 3 shots anyways, and when I see these targets, I feather 3 as fast as I can, I'm betting on getting at least 2 solid hits. So that's something I do. Now, a much better shooter or a pro shooter can probably just factor giving 2 solid hits per target. But you know, I'm not a pro or champion shooter, and feathering 3 at the target as fast as I can has worked pretty well in matches. Again, I'm hedging my bets on getting 2 solid hits out of that 3, but I feel it just saves time than trying to slow down and actually watch that target swing. Or if it was a disappearing target, then you're like, hey, did I get 2 good hits or not? So if I factor 3 in, it doesn't mess up my round count and planning where I need to do a reload, and it does up the chances of getting at least 2 solid hits on the target.
Are you ready? Yep. Stand by.
Now, my last tip is practice alone is not enough to get good in competitive shooting. To get good in competitive shooting, you've got to go out and you've got to shoot matches. You got to get that match experience. Go out, try some of these tips and techniques, and hopefully they'll help elevate your game. But again, match experience is what's going to make you a better shooter. And if you've never shot a match before, I highly encourage it. They're a heck of a lot of fun, and they will make you a better shooter competing in matches. whatever the discipline is. 2-gun, 3-gun, pistol only, they will up your shooting game. So as always, hopefully you found this video entertaining and informative. Now, go out and hit a gun match. I'm Jeff Gerwich. Thanks for watching.